My thanks to Louise, beautifully read, of course, as always. And my thanks to you for listening, hopefully. Now, if you get bored, you can always play countdown with my tie, or whatever it is. So that's a distraction. So we're in a very familiar passage here, friends. I think we'll all know something of this passage. And we're in good company, because Martin Luther preached on this 15 times. Thankfully, you only got to listen to me once. But it's a passage, to my mind, that gets right to the centre of the gospel. What the gospel's all about. Everybody is welcome in God's presence. So let's look back at the events. Jesus is doing what he does best. Telling them stories, telling them parables. Have you ever wondered why Jesus was so popular against opposed to the official teachers in the synagogues? He told them stories. Everybody likes a nice story. But what he put in the stories was spiritual truths we can all apply in our own lives and in our own situations. Shut up. So let's start, shall we? Luke chapter 1. I have to say I've only brought half my notes, so I forgot the other half. So it's not going to be as long as it should be. Unless I waffle.
Oh, it's divine intervention, David.
Absolutely, dear fellow. You said it better than I do, so. So here we are. So who's he talking to? Well, he's actually talking probably to some Pharisees who were nosing in as usual, trying to catch him out. So he starts with this. I've got the right page here. It's slipped. To some who are confident in their own righteousness. It's beautifully put, isn't it? You know, they were there, oh, we've made it. You know, we're moral people. Let's see what this upstart has to tell us. So he's aiming it at them and look down on everybody else. There's the Pharisees for you. So he starts the story. 2 men went up to the temple. Now, of course, when we say the temple, we mean the big temple. Big place in Jerusalem. Now, I don't know about you, if you watch these biblical films that come out, they don't seem to do the temple any justice at all. This is a huge building, covered, I think, a quarter of old Jerusalem at least. Dominated the city like no other building. A bit like old St. Paul's did in London before it was choked to death by office blocks and shards and whatnot. So, you know, he's setting it in a place where we're instantly recognisable to his listeners and to who were going to hear what he had to say. But of course, this applies to all of us, this story. His disciples, the ordinary people, we all have something we can take from this. So off these 2 chappies go to the temple. One's a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. So we'll deal with both in turn. Up comes our friend the Pharisee. Now this is a big occasion for him. He would have probably gone to the temple many, many times. I'm trying, honestly. Big occasion. No doubt he was dressed in his best for it. He'd have been well oiled before he went. I don't mean he had a few and was a bit tipsy. He would have got all the expensive oils out, done his beard, done his hair. Finest silk robe he bought from Herod's department store. I'm glad somebody laughed at that because I groaned when I wrote it. But anyway, there he is. He's dressed for the occasion. And the other, well, we'll get to the other fella in a minute. But what does the Pharisee do? He stood up. Now, nothing unusual in that. Jews prayed standing up, and they often raise their arms like this. But he said he stood up, and it said in some translations, on a place by himself at a distance. So he's picked his spot. He wants to be untouchable. He wants to be on his own. He wants people to see him, but he doesn't dissociate with people. And off he goes, and God, this guy's got an ego. My goodness. What does he say? Prayed about himself. God, I thank you. And that's the only time God gets a mention in all of this. He puts him in at the start. Well, we'll get rid of God at the start, and then it's, let's talk about me, shall we? I am not like other men. No, when he says other men, he's talking about everybody. You know, I'm the best. You know, if I was casting this for if I was a casting director, I'd have Muhammad Ali in this part. Because I looked at this and thought, this sounds like Muhammad Ali, 1st century AD style. You know, he's saying I'm the greatest. I'm not like other men, robbers, evildoers, adulterers. He's picked the worst examples, hasn't he? But in that, he's saying everybody. Everybody's falling short of what I've achieved. And very impressive what he's achieved as well. I mean, this is a good man in inverted commas. I'm getting there, aren't I? Good. This is a good man in inverted commas. You know, he does good. He gives his money away. fasts twice a week, which was not necessary. Fasting was only necessary, actually, the law says once a year, the Day of Atonement. But he went beyond that. He sounded like a super Pharisee. But he's also criticising his fellow Pharisees. He's saying they don't reach up to my standards. So he's doing all these good things, nothing wrong in those themselves, but he's left himself no room for manoeuvre. He's saying he has nothing to confess. He's done it all. So he's not really praying at all. He's just gone. It's a hymn to him, isn't it? Remember My Fair Lady? Hymn to him. You know, he's gone to, you know, big himself up in the eyes of God, in the eyes of all. You know, he wants an audience. And Jesus mentioned about such people, didn't he? He called them whitewashed tombs. He said, yeah, they look good on the outside, you know, they look very pious, look very nice, nicely dressed, good manners and all that. But inside, they're full of ego, they're full of everybody else is not right. I don't need God, I can get there on my own merits. That's what these people were saying. And that's why Jesus opposed them. It's not that he opposed Pharisees per se. You know, he dined with Pharisees. Some Pharisees were his followers. Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea. He had some who were followers of him. But the vast majority, he upset their ego by saying, no, what you're doing is wrong. Nobody can get to heaven on their own merits. You need a saviour. You need that intercession. So that's where they went wrong. And, you know, he went away empty-handed. He went back to his house, not having met with God, not having prayed properly, sorry, and not... it's all right, yeah, I will. That's it. You can all hear me anyway, can't you? I'm sure they hear me at the end of the park. The point being is, of course, that Jesus knew that their egos were letting them get in the way of hearing his message for the first time. Thank you. It's nice to have a glamorous assistant. So, the Pharisee failed. He didn't please God. He certainly would have annoyed his fellow Pharisees if they'd heard him. And he went away empty-handed. So let's look to the other fella, the tax collector. Now, I don't know what HMRC is like in people's minds these days, but I'm sure they didn't face the kind of vitriol that a tax collector would face in first century Palestine. They were amongst the most hated people around. Not just the fact that they were collaborated with an occupying power, but that they were cheaters. They're on the fiddle. They made lots of money, most of them, out of being dishonest. You know, they were considered one of the worst parts of society. Yes, they made lots of money. Yes, they made a huge living, some of them. Look at Zacchaeus. But they lost that respect from society, which the Pharisees, by and large, did have in the general populace. But the difference is, this man went to the temple to pray. He went to meet God. Now, he may not have gone for years. And look how he goes in. He doesn't go in all posh and proud and, you know, here I am. He slinks in. He hides. He doesn't do what is prescribed. He faces the floor. I don't know what he'd done. He might have done something really wicked, corrupt, swindled an old widow or something like that, stolen his kid's pocket money. I don't know what he'd done. But he'd done something that had forced him to come to that point that he needed to go and confess this to God. He probably didn't want to go, but he felt that what he'd done merited him to go to that position. Now in the temple, tax collectors were so despised, there's a special area they had to go and stand in. They couldn't go in the main concourse. So he's at this little place, and he said, all he says, his prayer is very short, but it's the essence of the gospel. Lord, have mercy on me, I am a sinner. So he's doing, in that simple prayer, there's three great points. He recognises it's only the Lord who can forgive him. You know, he's come to the place where he needs that divine forgiveness. And he won't get it anywhere else. He certainly wouldn't get it in the society that he lived in at all. You know, the Pharisees would have said, no, you're a tax collector. You know, you need to give that up and go and do good work to become one of us, whatever. He's asking for mercy. He knows what he's done is wrong. He knows that he can't fix this himself. So he goes to the only place he can, God, and he recognises that he's a sinner. And that's all that is needed. And that's the gospel, folks, isn't it? Nobody is beyond God's mercy. And that's something we can say hallelujah to, isn't it?
Hallelujah.
You know, all of us have that chance to get right with God. And Jesus proved this in his ministry time and time again. Yes, it said he did spend time with tax collectors and sinners, as they call, you know, but he went beyond society as well. He went to the people who weren't even allowed in society. The lepers, demoniacs, say the Romans. You know, they were outside of Jewish society. To talk or have concourse with the Gentile was considered a sin. But he healed a centurion's servant. What did he say to the Jews afterwards? Half of you are going to make it, the banquet, but these lot are. They're going to get in because they believe in me. So that really, that is, you know, I've come to the conclusion now. I told you it'd be short. I've only got half my notes. But, you know, we don't need a long sermon on this. This is a simple passage that encapsulates the gospel in all its glory, doesn't it? That, you know, whatever our background, however bad we've done, what we've done, we start a new sheet when we become Christians. That wasn't possible in the law of Palestine at the time. They said, no, you can get to heaven by your good deeds, do your good alms. Nothing wrong with that. And as Christians we should do that. But it's not the basis of our salvation. Never has been. But, you know, we are covered by grace, we're covered by mercy. However bad we are, you know, and I'm far from the Sermon on the Mount when I'm at work, I have to tell you. When I'm under pressure, I feel like a stoker at work. So I confess that to you now, and I would like prayer about it. You know, because I don't like doing it, but I fall into it. So all I would say is, let's follow the example of the tax collector. But the question we've got to ask ourselves is, in conclusion, how much of we are the Pharisee, how much of we are the tax collector? Only we can weigh that for ourselves, friends.
Oh, bless you, David. Thank you.